Good afternoon. We're on the road actually this week in France, staying at our friend's house, Arvin Narula. So before I introduce our brilliant guest today, I just want to explain to those of you who've never joined before how the system works. If you have a comment or a question, just type it in the lower right-hand corner or maybe your left-hand corner, depending on how you're looking at it. And if you need to send a private message to anyone, just move your mouse over their name and a window will pop up and you can send them a private message. If you want to clap or think that something is funny or brilliant, there are 3 emojis at the bottom. And this event is being live streamed to YouTube and also taped, so you can also watch it again another time. So today, I'm really lucky. We have Birgit Liodden, who is another overachiever, raising kids and running about 15 different companies, and also basically taking on a very small task of cleaning up all of the oceans of the world and making them healthy again. So for those of you who are not familiar with her, I'd prefer that Birgitta tells her story herself. Birgitta, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I must say I think that's really an honor, and I've been so inspired by all of your work through years following. So I am Birgit. I'm based in Oslo in Norway, born and raised, global citizen. I worked in executive roles across the global maritime industry for a bit more than 15 years. I have a background as a school dropout, which I know you pointed out, Robert. So contrary to a lot of the people of my generation, I left school at age 16, moved away from home, and started taking care of myself. And then some years after, I incidentally landed into international shipping and have since that worked on driving change from the inside of the industry that functions as the bloodstream of global trade and economy. So I have a background from the global headquarters of Wilhelmsen, one of the world's biggest car and rolling goods transporter at sea. I have also been an entrepreneur in a couple of rounds. I built up the world's first global organization for young people in the maritime and offshore industries, now spanning across 28 countries worldwide. I was director at YoungShip, which is one of the world's biggest maritime expos and event weeks at the age of 32. It's the first below 50 and the first female leader of any of the global trade shows in our industry. And then I took on the role of leading up Oslo's business program for being the European Green Capital a couple of years ago. And then I started my now existing venture, the Ocean Opportunity Lab, which is my third baby, a little bit more than 2 years now in the making. And throughout these years, I have combined my professional kind of daytime job with extensively taking on a number of key roles across both environmental foundations and more corporate and commercial executive board roles within companies that I see as front runners and disruptors within their industries, within then sustainable finance, hydrogen and renewable energy, and across then the ocean part of our world. So that was a bit about me, and then you just go ahead and dig in, Robert.
Well, I have a question. I mean, the maritime industry doesn't have a great reputation when it comes to issues around climate, ocean pollution. I mean, believe it or not, I actually worked on oil rigs in the North Sea, and this was a long time ago. And I remember there was no offshore pumping of the mud that was used to drill a hole. it was basically dumped right into the sea. So has things gotten better? Are are people willing to listen to you? Uh, what is your take? I mean, I prefer working with irresponsible investment and criminals because everybody starts at a certain point. So there's no angels out there; they're heroes. So how do what is your take on dealing with the Maersks and these massive industries with lots of stranded assets?
Well, I think that has been a huge motivation for me on my professional journey, because I do think that a lot of young people with my engagement and society and environmental commitment would typically go into NGOs or work for within the very green communities from beginning, whether it's across NGOs, politics, etc. I think for me, it has always made a lot of sense to work where the problems are biggest. So if you're going to work with gender diversity, it doesn't really make sense just to work across the Nordics, right? If you really want to make change, then you start working with India, Middle East, other regions where we can connect and really accelerate transition. When we look at the environmental focus in the global shipping community, a lot has happened over the past years. I've been in this field from the shipping side since 2006, and I remember that when I started hosting and co-organizing these first environmental seminars for the young generation to connect with big established corporates back in like 2008, 2009, there were some really driven actors out there. There were quite a few, very dedicated ones that were early on this train. But I would say that the predominant number of actors across the more kind of hardcore commercial fields and the operational fields, they were more like, patting my shoulder and just saying that, well, yeah, this is really nice and sweet, but, some of us actually have to do some real business. So, well, that was the perspective and focus back then. And then a lot of things have happened. And I think that what I saw was really that a huge change came with the first rollout from DNV and UN Global Compact on the Global Opportunity Report, at least for my industry. And I used that, the pre-work, even before that report was launched globally. I started building our strategy on that in shipping to use that as a business toolbox for my own industry globally to see where is the future business opportunity.
So, some people might not be familiar with DNGL, so you might want to tell who they are.
So the DNVGL is world leading on classification, all kind of standardization, and within the maritime industry, they work a lot on safety and health and environment issues to make sure that we operate the world fleet in a safe and non-harmful way. Now you're on mute, Robert.
Right. I mean, you're taking on a very big project and you're trying to mobilize entrepreneurs through tool spawn and actually get money flowing in a certain direction. You're doing multiple things. It's quite a lot of balls to hold in the air. But what is according to you the lowest hanging fruit where you can get the most success in restoring ocean health? Is it basically blue carbon, getting kelp to grow at 0.5 meter?
Well, it's a mix. And I would say that, having worked with this for a long time, I have worked with kind of 4 key drivers that I've focused on for many, many years. One is the finance and the capital market, like the financial sector, and their role and power to really push change within the maritime. Then you have local pioneering regions or cities, such as you would say Oslo or LA or other mega cities that are really driving change much faster than the global collective society or nations. Then you have the cargo owners, any big industrial player transporting a lot of goods. And then as the enabler, you would have the entrepreneurs. So in between there, I come from the established industry part. I've chosen to work with what I see as the key drivers to push and really kind of kick some ass within these established players. So I just came out from a meeting earlier today with a big cement producer. So Heidelberg Cement, they are a big cargo owner. And they are driving now a huge project on the world's first ship fueled on green hydrogen. That shows how the cargo owners and the customers, the big procurers, can truly make a huge difference. Then there are two elements to look at. So one thing is, of course, to capture carbon and regenerate life below sea. But while we do that and work on regenerative models, we also have to do two things. We have to stop emissions to air and sea, and we have to stop waste, chemicals, toxic materials to end up on the seabed. So, I mean, our focus with these kind of actors to play with and these kind of power mechanisms to play with, our focus is very, very strict, even though we work across ocean and renewable industries quite widely. It is on enabling a future where we have zero emissions, zero waste, and where we work for regenerative models while industrializing the future ocean industries.
Does the maritime industry get the same subsidy level that the airline industry gets? I mean, the airlines has no VAT on airline tickets, but there's 25% VAT on a bicycle in Norway, or 21%. And there's no tax on, the kerosene either. Is that the same with the maritime industry?
Well, I mean, it's a global market. So I have to say that what we have seen now is that, of course, ocean transportation is the most environmental friendly way of transporting goods worldwide, right? But still accounts for quite a substantial amount of emissions. We know that polluting is still too cheap, but we do now see an increasing growth in the regime of putting fees on emissions, which is, I mean, really, really good. We have had another key issue here when it comes to decarbonizing the maritime industry is that there is a kind of a gap between the rationale for the cargo owners to request emission reductions and for the ship owners to do the right investments. Because depending on the type of trade, you will see that it might be that you as a cargo owner could really push the type of criteria that you base your contracts on with the shipping community. So you can use the kind of green innovative procurement perspective on that, and that's something that hasn't really been utilized.
Do you engage also the cruise ship industry, or is it only cargo shipping?
No, I mean, we span across all parts of shipping. The nice part about cruise, even though, I mean, going on a cruise is as bad or worse as going on a flight when you look at the emission part of it, because you have so few people and so much tonnage. But also, this is a very interesting segment because this is normally, except for now during COVID, when we have really started seeing that the world press writes about congestions in world transportation and how our logistic and supply chain are really, really struggling, and where we get the implications as normal citizens or societies or governments or big companies. Now we feel how important shipping is, but normally shipping is an industry that is very invisible. But for the cruise segment, that is a segment that is much more facing scrutiny, like public scrutiny, when it comes to the way you treat people, the way that you deal with gender diversity, the way that you deal with impact on local destinations and the environment. So that is a very interesting segment to look at, I would say, because it's probably, except for local kind of short sea transportation and ferries and local tourism, it is really the segment of our world that the rest of the world has kind of a relationship with, for better or worse.
You see a lot of the big brands, the big shipping companies, talking about using sails instead of bunker, diesel, and green hydrogen. But shouldn't we be honest about this? We're like 10 or 15 years away from the shipping industry doing it at a lot. I mean, it takes a long time to build these super tankers. It's not like, order it and next week it's done. So is there really progress being made, or is it a just nice press release going out that says, okay, let's keep Birgit quiet, otherwise she's going to be bugging us, so we'll put out this press release? Are you getting traction?
Well, I do think so, and luckily I'm not the only change maker inside this fair. Now there is really a growing global community of green and blue change makers, also on the higher corporate levels and in the big power positions. I would say that, I mean, now we have come to a stage where solutions and technology is here. We still have to scale it, industrialize it, really get it out there. But we have technologies, we have solutions, not only for building new, but just as importantly, looking at how we retrofit and actually upgrade existing fleets and assets. So this is not like, I mean, if we think that we are going to get to zero emissions only by new buildings, then we are in for a struggle, because that basically the carbon count on that is it's terrible. But if you look at the renewal of the global fleet across segments now with new zero emission and hybrid technologies and solutions, and then you look at all of the opportunities that we will both utilize and where we will also have to invent new solutions. I mean, continuing to utilize existing assets and then retrofitting, redesigning, upgrading them, that is a huge opportunity. But I would say that even though, I mean, we have now the opportunity to work with ammonium, hydrogen, various sorts of batteries, etc., and there will be a lot to be done on reducing weight with new nanotech materials and designs. But still, we really need to mature and scale these solutions, because they are in the stage where there's so much to be improved still. And that's where I really think that the global financial community can also contribute hugely.
Do you engage, as in your network, which is pretty extensive, do you engage with investors on a regular basis? Just mainstream investors, or is your focus mainly on entrepreneurs and solutions?
Well, we build by and with and for entrepreneurs. So my core focus is the entrepreneurs. But if we are going to help empower the entrepreneurs and help enable them with our global community and technology and resources to actually succeed in both developing faster, scaling better, really hitting the market with the right market fit solutions, then of course it's not enough just to focus on working with the entrepreneurs. So we work for the entrepreneurs and for the future and the next generation, which is what we call empowering generation cleanup, which is our mission. But then in order to do that job, then we work with innovation clusters, governmental actors, the financial community, the big corporates, and also the other typical stakeholders in the cluster that we need in order to really support and nurture and enable these fantastic new solutions that we need into our society and world moving forward.
And do you get access? Because always the challenge that we've always felt was not the convincing, it was the access, the more money someone had. Like the new CEO of the government sovereign fund of Norway or the petroleum fund. Can you call him and say, "Oh, Birgit, come over. Let's chat how we should shift our assets of 1.3 trillion."
Well, we are so lucky that we get to challenge a lot of the players because they're people that I've worked with and also pushed quite hard over years. So we work with, amongst others, Storebrand, who
Oh yeah.
is, Norway's biggest fund after the Norwegian oil fund.
Yeah.
And with them, they are one of our core partners in the Ocean Opportunity Alliance.
Okay.
So we have worked with them both on encouraging and challenging them to give better pricing and actually work on the procurer side as suppliers to the innovators so that the blue and green innovators get actual real and big discounts on all of the products that they need to acquire anyway when it comes to normal fixed costs as you have as an employer. But we have also worked with them. We challenged them on their emission-free funds. So their fossil-free funds, earlier this year, we collaborated with Storebrand on their development of 3 new funds that are delivering on the new EU taxonomy. So I would say that, yeah, I think we are punching quite a bit above our weight. We also had for our formal launch this fall at Oslo Innovation Week, we brought with us Investinor, which is another of the big mechanisms from Norway to fuel innovation and entrepreneurship. And then on the global level, we work with World Ocean Council and Investable Oceans and their networks. And then also we are part of the 1,000 Ocean Startups Alliance alongside around 30 other players where we aim to collaborate on help nurturing and scaling 1,000 ocean startups throughout the ocean decade. And we have individual actors and bigger collectives that are working with us. And what we like to do is really challenge and showcase where are some of the key pain points and gaps for the innovators that now come in with new type of business models, new solutions that also challenge the kind of existing financial actors' way of funding and putting together the right structures for companies to grow.
What I'm still intrigued is how do you go from a high school dropout or a college dropout, I forgot which school, dropout to be like, Jan Erik's best bud at Storebrand to get him to actually move faster than, the music and be in that position of being made the CEO of these maritime companies. How does that work? Do you have kind of some compromising things you can blackmail these people with to get these jobs?
Well, no, not at all. But I do think I have some strength due to the fact that I am a dropout. I come from a very untraditional family background. So I come from family companies, though nowhere near the maritime industries. But I think I come from a family of very hardworking people. And I have always been working. I had my first paid job when I was 9 years old, working for a stable at the only race course from horses in Norway. And I have always made my own money and I've always worked hard. So I like to work. I like to be useful. Also, I have no respect for people's kind of position or power level or whatever. So I'm quite blunt and I'm quite direct and kind of I care about how people are on the inside in terms of their integrity, their values, their drive towards actually help changing our society, whether it's for the small or bigger initiatives. And I have never been into this either for like my own position. I don't
Mm-hmm.
like hidden power games. I don't do like internal politics, etc., which can be a huge disadvantage and a challenge. But it is also it gives you also, I think, freedom.
Mm-hmm.
It liberates you when you are just honest and you are yourself at any point of time, regardless of who you speak with or what you work with. So I think that my creativity and way of kind of connecting dots and seeing maybe very different type of solutions and ways of collaborating has been a strength. And I think that comes from not having that all of those formal recipes that you learn in school, and also having to work hard and kind of make a living from a very early stage where I was really, really poor when I moved out of home. So I think that kind of the way of thinking about how you utilize resources optimally and how how you just get moving forward one step in front of the other. I think that's good. And I always think that, if you have kind of a light head in front, like a lighthouse in front of you, about what kind of change you want to help contribute with, then you make the right choices along the way. And I think also it's the smitting effect, that you attract the right type of actors that share those more kind of genuine desires to help change. So I think I've been extremely fortunate, and I've met people along the way that has, seen past my lack of formal education or formal background, and rather seen kind of my enthusiasm and willingness to work hard, and more given me opportunities based on potential rather than previous track record.
Does being an authentic eccentric help you in a country like Norway or the Nordics in general, which are in some situations, the Norwegians have the best sense of humor of the Nordics. We all know that. In case you didn't know it, they do. Does it help you in that position? Because not having a kind of traditional trajectory in career and CV.
Well, I think it's a mix of both. It can be a huge challenge, and I would say definitely why I'm where I'm today is not because I didn't meet challenges or hinders or people trying to get me out of the way, because there has been lots of experiences where people have tried to kind of stop me or just get rid of me. But I think that I guess I kind of appeal to some people that, I don't know, recognize themselves in me, or I'm not sure, or even though even the type of actors I have also on their sides work hard to build and mobilize change, so they also kind of appreciate kind of crazy person like me who don't play by the rules and who wants to kind of create and help invent the future rather than just waiting for it to happen. So I guess it's a mix of both. But we also have, I think we have some great parts of the culture here in Norway and the Nordics, but we also have the janteloven. Like, you shouldn't think that you're better or different or whatever. And that can be a huge hinder. So I have learned that in some of the projects that I've worked on, for instance, on really pushing gender equality in our industry alongside the focus on the environmental part, where I have been stopped or blocked or not gained kind of support in Norway, I have just gone abroad. So when we established a couple of years ago what is now the world's biggest gender equality conference for the maritime industry, we did that with our Indian partners. So, rather than just kind of being stopped by a blocked and locked door, I have always been looking at, what is kind of the side door that I can create so that I will enter in a different way. So I think that has been both a strength and kind of a way of dealing with hinders.
You're the only person in my entire global network that has actually interviewed Barack Obama. So how did you get through that? What side door did you take to be invited to have an interview with Barack Obama?
Yeah, that's kind of a funny story, and it actually is a direct result of my work with gender equality in the maritime sector. So when I interviewed Barack Obama, then I was actually just signed on as director for sustainability and ocean and communication for the city of Oslo's innovation and tech vehicle, Oslo Business Region. And then there was a bunch of really cool, amazing student dropout entrepreneurs who had created something called Oslo Business Forum, which was doomed by the big established event organizers, but they have succeeded. And they had managed to get Obama to come and speak in Norway as the first big official act since leaving the White House back in 2018. And then they had actually brought in Richard Quest to moderate Obama, but then he wasn't accepted. And then they brought in a few other candidates, which wasn't accepted either. And then we were working with them on global press and the preparations toward this big global startup and tech week in Oslo. And they asked me for some input in that process. And I told them that, whatever you do, this will be the most seen event and session throughout all this week. So you can't have another man on stage. You need to find a female moderator to moderate the president. And then I was originally asked to help come up with a short list of local female change makers who have that kind of capacity to do that. And so I provided the team with a list, but then my boss, who also recruited me due to my kind of ability to shake things up, who has been really one of the pioneers behind building the startup ecosystem in Oslo, he added my name to that list. And then 2 weeks later, I got a phone call saying that they had picked my name. So that was it was unintentional, but it was also as a result of my commitment to really push diversity in some sectors that are extremely male dominated.
But how do you push diversity in such a male dominated, there's probably not that many captains of super tankers that are women, probably not in the top echelon. So how do you get buy-in from that, from such an entrenched conservative space? First, you got to get their attention. Okay, so, all right, let's listen to Birgitte. And what do you do to convince them?
Well, having worked in HR way back in Wilhelmsen and having worked with environment and sustainability for many years and things that I really care about, I have learned to talk in the business language when I want to have changes done. Because if you start talking in a kind of the wishy-washy softer ways about diversity or environment and sustainability, you will never get there. So what I do is that I bring out the business case. Okay. And I think that's extremely important because whatever kind of change or plan or strategy that we are laying out in whatever sector and type of business that we are involved in, it's all about setting, where is it that we need to go, why, and how will we get there? And what's in it for us to secure long-term robustness, being investable, being profitable, etc. So that's basically my very kind of simple language. I tell them why they need to actually get on this train. And I think for the maritime industry, it's really quite easy. We have a lack of attention to make sure that we can get the best heads and talents. And then when that is the case to begin with, then we really have to make sure that we can at least find talents from across the entire population and not just one half. So, that has been my focus in both the kind of the green shift discussions and the diversity discussions. And I also do believe that now there are so much statistics showing the good kind of growth and business potentials and the profitability when we manage to build diverse teams, also beyond the gender part. We need to really build very good, diverse teams that can tackle change and find opportunities, identify risks and challenges in a very fast-changing environment.
And because I agree with you that, don't shout loudly in Norwegian to someone who speaks Mandarin. If you want to get their attention, they still won't understand what you're talking about. So talking of the business case is clear, but you come across as kind of serious, but very playful. And I'm wondering, do people take you then seriously? Because they have to first, they see the playfulness, but then they start talking, oh, she actually knows what she's talking about, getting in the door.
Well, I think it's a combination. I think I in general, I have a good mood, and I like to kind of keep that kind of childish curiosity and playfulness when I work and do things. And I think that is something that gives us a better life. And I mean, that's what it's about, basically. But then I think I'm quite known for being brought in as the change maker. And the person who really not just touches the sore red spots, but that just kind of punches the finger in. So I think I'm normally when people bring me into meetings or roles or want to work with me, it's because I think they know that I'm extremely dedicated. I've worked on like really nerding in a lot of these fields for many years. So if I don't know as much as I need to know, then I know the right people who get connected further with, right? And even though I'm playful and generally in a quite good mood, I'm also quite strict. So if you've seen me in a board meeting or challenging ship owners or others, I mean, I think they're quite used to the tougher side of me.
We're getting a kind of a logjam of a lot of questions, so I'm going to start taking some of the questions from the audience. So Beata, my general counsel, she wants to know how close to the truth is Sea Conspiracy, the Netflix documentary, if you're familiar with that, and would you have an appetite to do the follow-up after COP26?
Oh, yeah. Well, I would say that a weakness that we have discussed about with Seaspiracy is that, I mean, pointing out a lot of the real problems out there. I think what they fail is to also cover a lot of the really good solutions and the things happening. So I would kind of like to see a sequel on that, where we also move into the innovators world and all of the radical new change initiatives that are coming up around the world. So I would say that it is a really important project, which I really support. And then I would also like us not only to look at the key threats, but also to really look at these opportunities and the solutions that we need to nurture and grow and fast scale, so that we avoid or at least reduce the extreme negative impacts and risks that we have seen in the film.
Okay, and do you have an appetite to do the follow-up after COP26?
Yeah, well, I would say that I'm kind of still, I know there are good signals from COP, but I also am a bit disappointed. And I feel that this is really now the time where we can't just wait for governments and the big players to act. We need to really mobilize this movement even much, much faster and heavier from the grassroots. So I would, I mean, what we aim to do with the Ocean Opportunity Lab as well is to really unite and mobilize the young generation and the grassroots. And I do believe that we would have a really good scenario, which I would like to see a film about moving forward, if we now took the Greta Thunberg generation and converted them from climate activists into becoming business activists. So that is what Tool is here for. We believe that if we take all of that engagement and commitment towards climate and the generation that truly sees the risks and the threats for us as humans, because I mean the world will still exist. The big question is if will the world and the planet be livable for our species. I would like to see that we kind of do our work to ensure that that can still happen. But then I also think that we need more fresh minds in, but we need to provide access to real insights, knowledge, and also open up the door so that the young generation can connect much closer with the established and the senior generations. If we are going to go from pointing out risks and challenges and threats and over to working really constructively with radical solutions.
Okay.
Well, next film up, I would say, I mean, bring on the young generation and show the amazing innovation that is happening all around the world.
Well, I'll connect you with my friend who's doing 5 Netflix documentaries, so maybe you can convince him to make a 6th one. And also, we will send a mail after this for the replay, and we'll give you the link to a tool spawn that Birgit has set up. So next question was Daniela, which is kind of, I think we address this basically how, the idea of sails and cargo ships in order to reduce fuel consumption. Is it really happening, or is it more a tiny niche? Because you were saying it'd be better to retrofit the established ships rather than go to new ships.
Well, you have to do both, which is my point. I mean, we have to make sure that ships that are built from now and moving forward, they need to be either zero emission or they need to be like a Lego box where they are ready for bringing in new solutions and technologies as we develop them. But you can't just base the green shift on building new. So you have to both do the right things on new builds, but you also have to work on what can be done on the existing fleet. And I do believe that the future is very much hybrid. Hydrogen won't solve all, batteries won't solve all. I mean, you don't have one energy driver or one type of technology or design that will solve everything. So what we need to do is really to bring the best solutions together and look at what are the hybrid combinations for the various markets and segments out there. And sail is really interesting. Wave energy is interesting. It's still very early. There's so much more to be done before it's kind of commercially viable. But look at now Oceanbird with Wallenius Marine in Sweden coming out with their basically flagship, which is again the result of an old design that Wallenius Wilhelmsen made for Toyota way back like early 2000, only as a concept ship to kind of explore what could the future look like.
Thomas Jepsen of Actwell, I wanted to know, do you also work with data transparency so that companies like ACT can make it easy to facilitate the last mile shopping? So basically allowing consumers to choose products based according to their CO2 footprint.
Well, definitely. And I mean, when I say that we cover the industries, that is both on the physical and digital part. So we are not the experts on data sharing, but we have a lot of companies that we work with that are working on this. And I would love to see, I was on the board of a company some years ago, a startup that worked on specifically that part actually of being able to kind of trace your choice as consumer based on the on kind of the transportation alternatives, etc. And we do have a strong need for, both big professional buyers and consumers to be able to make the right decisions. So So I think, where we are, we work with a lot of different actors in our ecosystem. They are probably more focused on enabling the cargo owners and the industrial players to make the right decisions. So you have a company and tool that is called Siglar Carbon. They have developed a service where cargo owners or ship owners or like oil and energy companies, they can go in and see like the environmental performance of different fleets, different ships, which type of route to prefer, etc., where you can cut up to 50% of the emissions of a transportation leg by choosing one route and vessel in front of another. So, and data access, measuring and sourcing data, but also utilizing and making it accessible. That is a key part of the future. And you know that here in Norway, we have Kjell Inge Røkke with the Aker system, who has initiated Rev Ocean, and they are operating this big global open data sharing initiative in collaboration with the group at World Economic Forum. So I think this is, it's really a vital part of the key to solving the future now.
Aaron wanted to ask something, make a comment. There's a behavioral economist by the name of Richard Thaler who has created something called nudge theory. Is such a system of incremental change preferred to knowledge leaps and large-scale mindset? My wife is an expert of the nudge theory, but it hasn't really changed my mindset. She's very good at constantly nudging that along, but the big mind shift change hasn't really occurred.
Well, I think that, if you nudge enough, then you really, you move faster. So I think I've always been nudging quite a bit, but then it's a matter of, not just being happy about nudging a bit, but making sure that whenever you nudge, you can then stretch and stretch and stretch. And also kind of playing various actors up kind of against each other in kind of a positive upward spiral on really, taking the lead on fueling this change.
Rick Khan asked, where do you see the technology going to replace fossil fuel engines like diesel and LNG in shipping that's cost competitive? Because you mentioned hydrogen, you mentioned batteries. No one is, other than the U.S. Navy, is building nuclear-driven ships.
Well, we have some companies working on nuclear technology in the tools fair. Of course, that is, a high... there's so many things still just with the perceptions about nuclear that I think that we need to resolve. But there has been some massive breakthroughs. I would say when you look at kind of the more kind of globally acceptable technologies for now, I would say that, the diesel engines haven't really changed that much, at least for ships, for many, many, many years. So there you would optimally look at containerized fuel cells moving forward as kind of the engine of the future. But then I think that my perspective on the future of these heavy industries floating would be that the future will be regenerative ships. So that's a while into the future, but we do see that this should be possible first on the smaller segments of floating installations and vessels that generate more energy than what they consume. So okay. I would say that this is the direction we need to work in.
I'm sorry, Shrish wanted to know, talking of the retrofit aspect that you mentioned, do you see the retrofit clean propulsion as being a strong path going forward for the maritime industry?
For some type of segments. So some type of boats and ships are more easy to retrofit and turn clean than others. And I think that the last parts that we will be able to solve are the really big deep sea ships, kind of the mega ships. Those will, of course, be the ones that take longer. But when we look at all kind of medium-sized kind of yachts or workboats or coastal near type of ships of varying sizes, there I think that it will be a good mix of building new and retrofitting. And I do think that we have done a lot of really interesting pilots here in Norway, but I do think that we will see a much bigger acceleration of going from kind of pilot initiatives to actual industrial and scaled initiatives when we introduce the combination of better and more efficient battery technologies and fuel cells.
Who had the most influence on your life, and who is your biggest supporter and cheerleader other than your children?
Well, I have been super, super fortunate. So I have had some really good mentors throughout my career. One of the individuals that have made the biggest difference for me is a ship owner called Elizabeth Grigg, who was the first female president of the Norwegian Ship Owners Association. Mm-hmm. She was also the first ship owner to really start working on anti-corruption. She started initiatives working on green recycling of ships, and she is huge when it comes to fueling diversity. And her company, the Grigg Group, they are now working on an ammonia project. So she has been my mentor for the past more than 10 years and is now on the advisory board of my company and in as a pilot there. Then I've also had a Monaco-based mentor who was the founder of V-Ships, Roberto Giorgi, who's another like strong profile in our sector. And then there has been many, many others. So I would say that there isn't one single person, but I do think that my grandparents who built our family companies from after the Second World War in Norway, basically like from two bare hands, living in a rebuilt hen house after the war, they are a huge inspiration and have always been in terms of like, you know, keeping your feet on the ground, working hard and staying humble, but also never giving up. And then it's a combination of people who inspire me in my everyday work and where I see that they do things that I didn't think was possible. And then I get to collaborate with them so that we can kind of co-create crazy and exciting stuff together.
We're coming to the virtual mixer part, and I'm sensitive about your time. Very kind that you were happy to join a little bit. What can this audience that's watching live and taped and on YouTube do to help you?
So we are building, first of all, we have developed the world's first interactive map of startups and innovators and resources for innovators in the ocean and renewable energy sectors. And anyone who would like to get on board as we really build this into a global community, we now have more than 1,300 actors mapped. We have partners across more than 30 countries, including anything from India to Saudi Arabia, across Europe, Canada, and the US. But anyone who really has a passion for working towards sustainable solutions in the oceans and who wants to contribute being a resource of any type for ocean and energy entrepreneurs, whether it's advisory, investments, or pilot customer partnerships, etc. I mean, this really, I think it takes a village to raise a startup. And it takes a huge global village of experienced people with power and resources and willingness and commitment to change and to help these change makers really take out the potentials that they represent and that we need moving forward.
Thank you. I'm going to start the virtual mixer, so don't leave. Just stay where you are. The system will do everything.